All right, let's talk about the big report. This one is from Black Knight, their July Mortgage Monitor report. And so on Tuesday, we got the CoreLogic report that showed that home prices fell in July 0.3%. So not a big number, but a decline nonetheless. We haven't seen that in a while. And in this case, it has been a while. I think 2019 was the last time that we saw home prices fall. So, and here's the other thing that's very important is that when you're talking about home prices, the kind of gold, yes, the gold standard, of course, is Case-Shiller, but the way Case-Shiller looks at home prices, the one that gets all the attention is the year-over-year number. Because monthly data fluctuates. It's why when everyone was making a big deal about the, median home price or the median home price, new home sale price or whatever it is. Yeah, I mean, they fluctuate month to month. 1 month they're up, 1 month they're down. I mean, there's just so many things that go into that. Are you seeing more sales in one area versus others? That's why it's more important to look at the year over year. It gives you a much better indicator. There's so much more data. It's much more reliable. And so month over month fluctuates. But it has been so long since we have seen a month over month decline, it is noteworthy that it happened in the month of July because we were operating at such a high level. I mean, it was the housing market was on fire that it was like unthinkable that you would see a price decline month over month. And so now we're clearly in a new realm. For the longest time, it was hot housing market. Then it was, I think the housing market's slowing. And now it's not only is the housing market slowing, we're actually seeing slowing to the point of a decline in home prices in a month where you don't typically see a decline. So what happened in July? So first, the year-over-year data, important. Big drop. So, this gives you more proof to the fact that we're seeing home prices fall month over month. A 2.5 percentage point drop month over month to 14.5% in July. That is now the fastest month in 40 years. The fastest decline month over month we've seen in 40 years. It eclipsed last month. So clearly the slowdown is accelerating, and we are now looking at year over year prices down almost 5 percentage points in just 2 months, 4.9 percentage points. That's a big deal. And of course, because of what happened month over month, prices falling 0.77%. That is the largest single month decline in home prices since January 2011. So over 11 years since we have seen a price drop of this size, 0.77%. It is the second largest decline ever recorded in July, because July, not really known for seeing movement one way or the other with regards to housing. Usually the summer is all kind of even. Obviously you see declines at the beginning of the summer from spring, and sometimes you'll see declines as we head into winter. And there's just sometimes the buying season is just really bad, and so you normally see declines. July is not one of those months that you see that. So nationally, home prices were off of their peak by levels less than 1%, like 0.77%. But other markets have seen much more significant declines. In fact, they're almost all in California. There's only one city that's not in the top 5 that's in California. That's not in California, I should say. San Jose, California was number 1. They have seen prices drop in 3 months, 10%. That's a big move. And I'll explain why it's such a big move in a second. Seattle was actually number 2 and was the only city not in California. They saw a 7.7% drop in the last 3 months. San Francisco was down 7.4%, San Diego 5.6%, and Los Angeles 4.3%. So not surprising. We've talked about California. We've talked about what's happening over there. It's gotten so bad, housing affordability, that Governor Gavin Newsom is like taking on NIMBYs so they can build more apartment complexes. He's like, we got to build more. This is ridiculous, which Democrats have not historically been on the side of development. And so the fact that he is not only fighting for them, but actively doing it, him and the Attorney General in California, just really shows you how insane things are. And yeah, home prices in especially places like San Jose and San Francisco, I mean, parabolic. When this housing market took off, I mean, just skyrocketed. And so, of course, those are the places where you're going to see they saw the biggest rise up. They're going to see the biggest fall, and at a quick pace as well. So, I mean, it's pretty even, right? What goes up quickly will also usually fall just as quickly. And so why is the 10% number a big deal? Historically, looking at national numbers, in the early 90s when we saw a little bit of a housing recession, an overall economy recession, it took 2.5 years for home prices to shed 10% of their value. During the Great Recession, it took 10 years. And so you have places like San Jose that did it in 3 months. I mean, like I said, what goes up very quickly will also fall down very quickly. So it's not surprising that the West is where you're seeing these prices fall. So what are the markets where you're seeing almost no prices fall? Where do you think that is? Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the South. Not surprising. 8 of the 10 spots in terms of home price growth are in the southeastern region. Not surprised by that at all. Now, the one area that's very important when it comes to housing, because we all remember in 2008, why did everyone walk away from their homes in 2008? And really, it was twofold. It was their loans resetting. So people who were doing subprime loans, interest-only loans, interest rates had gone up. The loans were resetting at a much higher price point, and they couldn't refi, and because the home values plummeted. So they couldn't refi. They were stuck with that loan. It reset. It was going to just an astronomical level. They couldn't afford the loan. But one of the reasons why they didn't even care, I mean, I'm sure they cared, but what made it a little easier for them to make the decision is that the value of the home disappeared. And they not only, because a lot of them were doing interest only, I mean, the minute they saw any decline in home prices, they were underwater. And so they had no equity in the home. They couldn't afford the housing payment. And so they were like, boom, we are walking away. But having skin in the game, they have found, study after study, is a big motivator for people to stay in their home. And there's one thing we've seen an explosion of, thanks to an explosion of home prices, has been home equity. I mean, all of a sudden you've seen houses out in California where people are sitting on, 50, 60, 70% equity because of how high the home prices climbed. And so what does this mean going forward when we start to see home prices beginning to decline? And this is kind of a big deal because the impact on equity of price drops, according to Black Knight, it's a big deal. I mean, it's double the impact. So a 5% decline in home values nationally will equate to a 10% decline in tappable equity. And of course, tappable equity means meeting the qualifications to be able to extract equity from your home. So you may actually have more equity, but you can't tap 100% of it. There are rules. So that's why it's tappable equity. So total tappable equity was down 5% over the past 2 months, suggesting a sizable reduction is likely in the third quarter, which would mark the first quarterly decline in 3 years. So a decline, and this is very important to remember, it's been so long since we've seen this, 3 years, but it wasn't like the last time we saw a decline was the housing crisis. And so it's important to remember that fluctuations quarter to quarter, month to month are common. It's the year over year data that you don't see a lot of movement in. And so that's why it was so amazing, good or bad, that we were seeing home prices increase by double. That doesn't happen. You don't see double digit year over year home price increases, especially for the sustained period that we just witnessed it happening. And one other takeaway in all of this, because I don't want people to freak out, because this is what's going to happen. It's been so long since we've seen home price declines, and that we've seen, quarter over quarter declines, month over month declines, or even year over year declines, that I think people are going to panic and think it's 2008. It's important to remember that the second quarter, so before really kind of we saw the slowdown take place, the lowest quarter end with regards to negative equity on record, or I should say it was a record low for end of quarter negative equity properties. I don't think I said that. How did I word it in this article that I wrote? Like I'm reading it like I wrote it, and I might have to go back and edit this on the website. But basically, homes that are negative equity, homes that are worth more or worth less than what the borrower owes, reached a record low at the end of the second quarter. And so we're in a situation where we can see tappable equity rise, or I should say fall. And it's not going to be the catastrophe that we saw in 2008. Not even close. I mean, not even close at all. And in fact, fewer than half of 1%. So fewer, so that's 0.5%. Less than that are mortgage holders owing more than their home's current market value. So that just gives you an idea of how extremely low that number is. I mean, we're less than half of 1%. And now things are going to move quickly, so that number might rise, and that's going to give a lot of the crash bros, oh, look, it's jumped up 1,000%. But that would take it to like what, 1.1%? Something along those lines. Now, Ben Grabowski, who is Black Knight's data and analytics president, said that, most housing data has a lag to it. Here we are, it's September, we're talking about July. We don't get Case-Shiller data for the month of July until the end of September. So it's a lag. And normally it's not a big problem because you just don't see the volatility in housing that you see in kind of, other markets. This time, though, I think different. And I think that's what's creating a lot of these problems. Grabowski said in a statement, quote, in January, prices rose at 28 times their normal monthly rate before slowing to 5 times average in February as interest rates began to tick up. And even in May was still about 2 times normal. However, in June, a brick wall, 70% below the long run average. And all the while, annual appreciation continued to appear historically strong, showing double-digit growth month after month. Now, without timely, granular data, market-moving trends don't become apparent until they are right in front of you, like a sudden shift to the largest single-month decline in home prices in more than a decade. So, I mean, he's pointing out that, all this data for so long has been so good. And then all of a sudden it's like, boom, what happened? And it's, it's been kind of happening. We've talked about that, right? And that's why you got to look at all the data. And we've talked about what's been happening with inventory, thanks to what Altos Research does. You can look at weekly mortgage demand. You can look at what's happening with the overall economy. Obviously, we have weekly mortgage data from Freddie Mac. All that gives you an idea of what is happening. And when you're seeing inventory levels rise, mortgage demand fall, and mortgage rates rise week after week after week after week, you got to assume that there's something slowing down in housing. I mean, it makes sense. And that's why it's so important to look at all the data.